Hello everybody, my name is AJ. I'm an intuitive channel. Together with my husband Thomas Workman, we are the creators of speakingfromsource.com. And it was about a year ago that I was in Cairo, Egypt. I was with a great number of other people who are doing some amazing work on the planet to create the last great activation and anchorage of consciousness in the planetary grid. In February 22nd of 2022, organized by Matias De Stefano and the Yosoi I Am activation that we did there. And I wanted just to look back and share some of my personal insight and memories, and hopefully many of you will remember some amazing things as well, and many of you may have very similar experiences. It's taken me a little bit of time to do this because it was such an intense and overwhelming and wonderful experience, and it was just difficult for me to talk and share about my my memories because they were so personal, they were so close to me. You know, like many of you, I had memories that come back that were 12,000 years old, and memories that were off planet. This had been in the making for a long, long time, and it was a very special time. So there we were to balance the energies in Cairo, giving the energy from the earth via the elemental beings back to the planet. And I had had a lot of interest in this since I was a very young boy. I'd been interested in ancient Egypt since I was about age 9, and I started collecting some Egyptian replicas and artifacts through my teenage years and right up to my adulthood. And, you know, the opportunity to go to Egypt was the dream of a lifetime, let alone would I expect to be doing this important spiritual work with such an amazing person such as Matias, and to come full circle, as it were, in this consciousness. And I'd actually done a activation in 2011 in Sedona as part of the 1111 Portal Gateway. That was entirely in preparation of this trip too, as well, in 2022. So I was actually part of the fire group along with 500 other people, and our job was to ignite and expand the information from the pyramids into the Planetary Network. And my specific group of 32 was the TH group, which was Ether, joined with the Y group, Dimension, and BH group, Heritage. And so altogether we made up 96 individuals to gather inside the King's Chamber for the great activation that we were doing, marking the gates of time and space. So it was very exciting. We had a protocol and a lead up that Matias was guiding us through for some period of time. And we did some meetings online, and we met our group leader, Kike, which was just incredible to have him coordinate such a great group and keep it all together via Zoom and answer all of our questions and then guide us, you know, through the whole process once we were there on site as well. I had everything I needed. I was doing the dietary restrictions, I was doing the meditations, everything was perfect. I'd booked the flight to arrive the day early so that, you know, we could participate in all of the ceremonies and activities. I was hoping to get a window seat, but I ended up with an aisle seat. And I was hoping to arrive during the day, but I was going to arrive around midnight the day beforehand so that I had a full day of participation with everyone there as we met to get to know everyone in person. And then we were going to go the next day at 11 p.m. to do the activation inside the Great Pyramid. And then this happened. It was a once in a lifetime or once in a 30-year storm arriving into London. Take a look. Actually, that plane that you're seeing is the plane that I was on as we were arriving into London Heathrow, and someone was filming it and it went viral.
The controls. Managing the descent, managing the speed. Going easy, it's made triple seven. Barring triple seven. Don't towards me. Don't towards me. You're right, you're right. Hey! That's a big wing, didn't that? You're having to control that size.
and that was actually on the made a story on the New York Times with all of the planes that were landing and having difficulty, and the airport was actually virtually shut down after we arrived. We were one of the last planes to arrive, and we arrived with a thud. We landed almost on all wheels altogether and came to an abrupt halt, and we were on the airport on the tarmac for a good 2 hours. It was so windy and so gusty that we couldn't even get to the gate, and they had to arrange for special buses to have us disembark on the tarmac and drive us to the terminal just to be safe. And so they actually had to find people to drive the buses once they'd find the buses to get out there. And I was doing a mild panic by this time because I realized that time was ticking for my connecting flight to Cairo, which in itself would be about 4.5, 5 hours. But, you know, everyone was in pretty much the same boat. All of the flights were delayed. And when I finally got to the airport, inside the terminal, I realized that my connecting flight to Cairo was late. And so eventually I was able to board that, and it was delayed even further. Apparently they were waiting for someone's baggage to arrive. So we were sitting there at the gate, and then when we pushed back from the gate, we were waiting a little bit longer because they had some paperwork that they had to complete before they lifted off. And so you can imagine, I'm like, oh my God, time is ticking. And we eventually lifted off, and I'm like, great, we are on our way. And I was so happy. And the dinner service was being served, and then we heard this boom, boom announcement from the cockpit. It was the pilot, and he said, we are having to turn around because of mechanical difficulties on the plane. We have a mechanical emergency. And we were 2.5 hours into our flight en route to Cairo, and he said that the Cairo authorities would not accept responsibility for the plane if there was an issue. And so we had to turn around, and the dinner service was promptly packed up, and we had an anxious 2-hour flight back to London, which was just terrible. And when we landed, what we realized was that there was a issue with the front tire. It was compromised in some way because maybe of a previous landing that had happened during the storm. And when we landed, the front tire burst, and there was some flames, and it was a bit of a rough landing, and probably just as well that we were back home at Heathrow Airport. But it meant that I would have an overnight, and I would lose a complete day. And I arrived, along with a great number of many other frustrated passengers, at the local hotel airport there by about midnight. And I tried ringing customer service, and their lines were down because it was a tremendous storm and they were just overwhelmed. So the only thing I could do was to get to the airport early that next morning. So at about 5 o'clock, I caught a shuttle over to the airport, and I had realized that they had booked us on the exact same flight, leaving and arriving the same time the very next day, which would be around 11 o'clock. So I'd be coming into my hotel around midnight. But that was the time that I was supposed to be at the Great Pyramid. And I'm like, that is just not going to work. That was the whole purpose of my trip, was to get there to do this activation inside the pyramid. So I was very polite, and I was able to speak to someone, and they said they have one additional flight, but it's predominantly sold out. The only seat that they had was in the very last row in economy, and it would get me to Cairo at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm like, I will take it. Sign me up. But then there was another problem. They had lost my baggage. So I'm like, okay, let's just go with the flow. Let's just let what happens unfold for my, highest and greatest good. And I made sure that I was calm and balanced. And they were really great. They actually said, why don't you spend some time in our guest services lounge, where you can have some coffee and some food and relax until your flight is ready. And during that time, I actually got a text that my baggage was found, and that everything looked good for my connecting flight to Cairo. So I boarded that flight, and as I was at the entrance to the gate itself, I passed the boarding pass through, and there was a problem. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this cannot be happening. And he said, "Oh, I actually have some good news for you. You've been upgraded." And I had a wonderful premium seat that I was upgraded to. And guess what? It was a window seat that I had wanted. And in addition to that, I would be arriving in Cairo during the day. So I'd be able to fly over Cairo and look down as I was descending down into the city during the day. So that was actually what I wanted to have happen in the first place. And it was happening in reality, albeit a day later. And so it was amazing, as I was traveling up in the sky toward Cairo, I looked out my window and there was this phenomenal cloud formation. And there's a picture of it right here that I was able to take. And there were all these clouds lined up in a grid formation all the way along as we were traveling for a good 15 to 20 minutes. I mean, I have never seen clouds arranged in a grid formation like this. It was truly exceptional. And I realized that, consciousness work was being done on the grid right then at that very minute. And I'm like, yep, everything is going to plan. This is real. It's all happening. And then about 10 minutes later, as I flew on, I flew over this mountain range and I saw just the very top part was outlined in snow. And I'm like, that's the silver dragon. That's the energy of the silver dragon that is there to guide me and protect me. And I just felt at that moment, okay, everything's going to work out perfectly. Well, it seemed to. But when I arrived in Cairo, I finally arrived and I was happy to be there. But, because I was a full day late, there was no one there to greet me. The visa that I'd already paid for, the greeter wasn't available with that visa. I had no cash on me and I had no transportation. So I quickly had to figure out how to get a visa, which was no problem, really. I went to the bank at the airport there and I converted some US dollars over to cash. So that wasn't a particular problem either. And then I had to arrange my transportation and I arranged a great driver to get me to the Marriott. And once I arrived at the Marriott, it was dark, so as I approached Cairo, I really didn't have much of a sense of my bearings because it was dark at this time, but I went straight into the lobby there, which is a beautiful lobby. It was quite busy at the time, and I showed them all of my information, and guess what? They had no booking for me. They couldn't find my information anywhere. And when I explained what happened, they said, oh, we assumed that you weren't going to make it, and we had canceled your booking. But they were very wonderful. They accommodated everything for me and they got me a great new room up on the 12th floor and, confirmed that everything was booked and paid for. And so I was able to get my bags, get my room, go on up to my room, have a quick shower and get myself together. And it was just enough time for me to get the things that I wanted to take into the Great Pyramid organized as well. I made sure that I had a beautiful amethyst crystal with me that I took for spiritual wisdom and to remain calm and centered and guided. Of course, the Yosoi pendant that I was wearing around my neck, some moldavite to remind me and to represent the extraterrestrial connection that I have with my extraterrestrial friends that were guiding and supporting me along the journey. And of course, a little pendant with the Argentinian flag. And that was really significant because Argentina was my node. Argentina was the node that I was representing inside the Great Pyramid. And I took that as a great honor because Matias was from Argentina, or is from Argentina, resides in Argentina. And so I really wanted to, I especially wanted to be there to represent Argentina inside the Great Pyramid for my work to be done there. So with only 30 minutes to go before our bus was ready to be boarding for our trip inside the pyramid and to the Giza Plateau, I went to the gathering area in the lobby and met the other 31 members of my TH group. And there were the hearts and smiling faces of Josh and Ibo and Sabina and Patty and so many more in the group that had been praying for me and had been working on my timely arrival and had held me in their hearts for safe passage. And I was just so grateful and so overcome to see them. And I must say, it was one of the most heartful experiences of my life to have those people there that I had never met in person before, to have them holding those intentions and supporting me on this journey to get me there, to be as part of the whole group for this activation inside the Great Pyramid, and to support me spiritually. It was just wonderful. And Patty pulled me aside, who turned out to be a dear friend through the entire journey and to this day. She spoke to me and she said, when Kike read your message to us, that you were calm and had been meditating on your way out here despite all of the delays, and that you felt that you would get here in time. We all knew that you would arrive and that you would have the necessary alignment to be with us and with the group to make our venture into the Great Pyramid successful. And it just meant so much to me, and it was very special indeed. So there we were. I was finally on the bus, and I was finally with my group, and we were all set to go to the Giza Plateau for the very first time and experience the Great Pyramid and do our activation there of the planetary consciousness. And that is what's next.